Welcome to part one of this four-part series on emotional health. For many of us, we're so busy doing life that we don't stop to think about our emotional health. Yet it's foundational to our spiritual growth and maturity. This series' goal is to increase your self-insight, not to identify and fix all your problems, recognizing that emotional growth is a lifelong journey, but to encourage you to take important steps forward in your emotional health. It's also to give you a sense of hope that change is possible and you don't have to remain in bondage to your history or your habits or your pain. Now, the first step to getting unstuck is to increase our self-awareness, not just of our external behavior, but especially of our internal world, our emotions, motivations, character, and the narratives we tell ourselves. Did you know that our successes and failures in life are rarely based on our expertise or how much we know? It's almost always rooted in the internal stuff, what I call heart matters. Yet it's often one of the most neglected parts of our lives. In our busyness, trying to juggle the multiple demands of life, self-awareness can just sometimes take a back seat. Dealing with heart issues takes a lot of character, humility, and willingness to suffer. And sadly, too many people choose never to do this work, often because of fear or pride or insecurity. But in fact, God has a lot to say about the heart. For example, in 1 Samuel 16:7, he says, "People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Often people are so busy simply surviving life that they forget really living requires some time reflecting on what we're actually doing with our lives. When we fail to look at our internal world or face our pain, we end up hitting a wall in our growth emotionally and spiritually. And so I've come to realize that we just cannot attain spiritual maturity if we ignore our emotional health or are in denial of the truth of our inner world. Denials are an unhealthy way of escaping the pain and conflict in our lives. Its goal is self-preservation. It prevents us from stepping into the fullness of the life God is calling us to. But let me ask you, are you feeling stuck? Do you ever find yourself repeating the same old patterns of responding to others, no matter how many times you vow to react differently? Do you ever find yourself struggling with negative feelings towards others, especially when they seem to know how to push your buttons? You ever find yourself unable to break free from addictions, whether it's to alcohol or work or food, or even the approval of others, no matter how many times you pray and confess? When we choose to turn our lives over to Jesus and make him the Lord of our lives, it's absolutely the best, most important decision we'll ever make. But many of us mistakenly believe that once we take that step, somehow our lives will miraculously be healed of all of our brokenness. But in reality, growing in our faith and our character is very much rooted in working through our brokenness, trusting God in the midst of great pain, and believing in his promises that he will use our pain for a good purpose in our life. So as you watch the rest of this series, I want you to remember three key principles of growth and maturity. Number one, be teachable. And by that I mean, be willing to examine your failures and be willing to admit your mistakes. Be willing to grow, to become the best version of yourself. And number two, build relationships. We're all wired to need relationship. Connection is when you feel heard, accepted, and valued, and when you can offer the same to others. Research shows that those who are connected in healthy relationships, they live longer, they're happier and healthier, and they can handle more stress. So don't do it alone. And number three, risk vulnerability. People don't expect you to be perfect. They're much more drawn to people who are authentic. Truly great impact only happens when you present your authentic, imperfect selves to the world and you allow yourself to live from your humanity and honest struggle. So take down your walls and remove your masks. As a recovered people pleaser, I know what it's like to wear a multitude of masks, depending on what others want from me. Aren't you tired of pretending? Let's all spur each other on to be authentic.